Women and men of the 515 Amen. I hope this week's Howzit finds you doing well. As a reminder, this is our chance to talk. So internal to our wing, the whole idea here is we're trying to generate some conversations on some topics you might use in your own individual 3 to 5s throughout the week. So please continue to engage in those important and valuable conversations as you're doing so. As such, I'm not trying to tell you how to think or what to think. I'm trying to give you a perspective, and if that drives a conversation where you all say, hey, the boss is completely nuts on this, I am literally okay with that. What I want is you guys to be just having the conversations and talking about it through amongst yourselves. So all good things. Wrapping up a few things right off the bat from our racial disparity town hall, and I will tell you this week, you guys have given me some really tough ones. So I am certain I will probably go a little bit long here, but we'll do our best. There was a couple of items, you might have seen them already in the comments of the Facebook where I put them in there, but yes, as was noted, that particular study was done specifically for looking at within the Air Force African American Black airmen. That does not mean that the Air Force doesn't recognize there's a need to do more studies, and they have said that yes, they are all in on doing that and figuring out what that looks like in the future. And on their way ahead, if you get into the study and you look at these are the places where they're moving out, they are specifically moving out with organizations in the same way that they're working with historically Black colleges. There are other organizations that are focused on Hispanics and other groups that they are already engaging with too. So they're not waiting for a study to move out and engage on some of those sorts of things. But more importantly, specifically for us and our wing and our organization, I do think it's important to recognize that our line of effort, our priority, the way it is stated, and hopefully you know these by now, but I'll continue to tell them so for everyone, it is the idea that we are going to develop a transparent culture where we are free with our information and that we are open and discuss, but this transparent culture where all airmen, regardless of any discriminatory factor that you would consider, all our airmen feel valued, respected, and free of harm. All right, you don't feel like you're going to be harmed in any way, whether that be free of harm from sexual assault, domestic violence, anything like that, or from depression and self-harm. This idea that you deserve, as someone who is standing here beside me as my wingman, serving within this organization, to be in an environment where you feel valued, you feel respected, and free of self-harm. And it goes to everyone. This is kind of an unpopular thing to say, but I don't mind saying it to you. That includes airmen who look like me. I need to be able to create a culture where all airmen, and I think we can do that, and I think we can be realistic about that and not diminish the conversation about minorities. I think we need to be able to find a way to be open and honest with all the places where we're coming up short and addressing issues for our minority airmen and still ensure all our airmen feel valued, respected, and free of self-harm. Another issue that came up out of this conversation this week is there's some terms that we use within the Air Force that some people take offense to. One of which has been discussed previously within the Air Force is the concept of chief. And really this comes down to the idea, is there a cultural appropriation from Native Americans by having the term chief and any of the symbols and the term that can be come with it. Another one that was brought up is the idea of master sergeant and the use of the word master. Because although for someone like me who's a master navigator, I view this as demonstrating that I am at the top of my profession as a navigator. So a master sergeant is at the top of their profession. But someone who views it differently from a background of colonial capitalism or slavery or those sorts of things, this idea of having to say yes master, no master, those sorts of things, to them feels demeaning and all that sort of thing. So we're taking those inputs in, and I'm hiring them up to half. I'm including, this is, where we're at on it, and I think that's a decision for big Air Force to look, but those voices matter, your inputs matter, so thank you for them, and we'll continue to take them, and just realize, that it generates a conversation. It's a conversation worth having, because it's okay for you or me to have a different opinion than someone else, to respect those opinions and still let those people know that they're valued and respected. What else did I have in here? Submitting, all those, we hit that, and we hit the big transparency discussion, so all good things. One of the other things I talked about in my Facebook note a little bit in the comment, but I think it's worth bringing up here because it actually ties into another conversation I was having on clear and concise guidance. Within our organization, if you ask somebody for something, because we value and respect the person that we're talking to, it is completely my expectation that you're going to get back to them. You're going to give them an answer. You don't come to me and the popular term is ghosting. You don't come to me and say, hey, sir, I really think we should, take care of the widgets in the closet. And I'm like, I don't care about the widgets in the closet, so I'm just never going to talk to you about it again. If I truly don't care about the widgets in the closet, then I'm going to tell you, hey, you know what? I don't think that's our biggest priority, and I'm not going to put any time and resources to it because we got this instead. And we can have that conversation, and we can feel, respected about it. And if the widgets in the closet are that big of a thing to you, you have absolutely the right and the expectation for me to go to higher and to tell, and honestly, if you respect the person, you'll tell them too. And anytime I've ever done it, I've always told the person, like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, I think we should be able to resolve this, but we can't, but I really do feel this important about it, so I'm taking it to the next level, whatever that level may be. And I'm always going to encourage you to do that, and sometimes that's the next person in the chain, maybe it's the IG, maybe it's your congressman. I mean, by law, I will absolutely never interrupt anybody trying to talk to their congressman, and by just the character of who I am, I'm not going to interrupt that. So, 100%. I want you to communicate. I want you all to talk with each other. But when we don't do that, this is where this things start to break down for us. Also applies to when we talk about clear and concise guidance. So I cannot fathom a situation where any leader within this organization would ever turn around and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to tell some people some vague stuff so that they'll run around and keep busy, and then at the end of it, feel like their time was wasted because they never knew what to do. That's just not what we do. It's not who we are. I mean, there are organizations, like I think of like maybe Communist Russia or something like that, where it was, hey, let's keep the people working for minimum wage and just a little bit of food on the table, but we really don't care what they get done or something like that. I mean, it's so difficult to fathom a scenario where everyone would do that. So we know this. We know people absolutely intend to provide clear and concise guidance. At the same time, we don't want to micromanage anybody. Nobody, sometimes it's like, hey, tell me what to do and just tell me when it's done and I'll do it. I mean, I get that. But when it comes down to, hey, tell me exactly what to do, how to do it, at some point you're like, get out of my chili, boss. I got this. All right. Every single supervisor is looking for that, from myself on down. Where's that right balance between telling you, here's what to do, and being too far down in your chili, right? Because I don't want to be there. I don't want to be the boss where everybody says, no, this wing commander, he is way too much into us. How do I find that balance of, I'm really interested in knowing what you're doing because I want to understand the mission, but not be so far down and like, man, every time I turn a wrench, he's, questioning if I got it to the right torque setting. We're all struggling with that. So what does that require when the guidance isn't enough? Well, it requires communication back, right? That's what this transparent culture is about. It requires you to come back at us and say, hey, I thought I understood when you said what you wanted to do, but I really am maybe not quite getting it, and coming back at us. And I absolutely want that, and every single supervisor within this organization wants that. Because if not, you got great airmen, myself included, who I'm running as fast as I can because I want to get stuff done, and I want it to be good. And then I come back from my boss and says, yeah, Shrek, that wasn't what I was looking for at all. And it's like, holy crap. Not only did I screw it up and not get it right, but I wasted a ton of my time and effort not getting it right. And that just hurts, When you choose not to do something and you don't get it right, or you do a half, job at it, great. Then you didn't do it right in the first place, and I don't see any of that going on within our organization. But when you really work hard at something and then you don't get it right, that's because you didn't understand it. We didn't do a good job communicating, and that's really what we're fighting for on that portion of it. So like I said, we don't ghost in this organization. Don't do it. Just because I know I'm going to get the question afterwards, I'm going to answer it right now. So what are my thoughts on actual ghosting? Because I know it'll come out there, and I'm not the wing commander who is going to be involved in your personal lives. I'm definitely not your dad telling you how you should date or anything like that. But I will tell you this, as representatives of the 515 AMAL and the Air Force, I think we should value and respect everyone that we engage with. And part of that value and respect applies in all of our communications, whatever form of communication that is, and whatever the topic is. So I highly encourage you to consider that and how you hold yourself as an airman. The other part, though, is if you're someone who has been ghosted, the only thing I can tell you is, in addition to my condolences, I understand how you feel with that one. And, honestly, I would put it behind him, because anyone of that moral character who would take place in such an action probably isn't worth your time. But that's what it is. I've answered the question, and now I know I won't get the 10 follow-ons on it, which is good. I appreciate all the follow-ons, and if you got more on the subject, I'm still happy to take it. We hit on all those ones. All good stuff. Moving on to our next topic here. A little bit on good order and discipline. So the key with this one is, or at least what kind of brought it up, with this idea that, hey, COVID rules only apply to some people and they don't apply to other people. So it's this long-standing idea that rank has its privileges. So rank does not have any play in the COVID environment. All right. Colonel is just as likely as an airman to transmit COVID to someone else. So I don't get to play by any different rules. We all have missions to do. The way I do my mission and the things that I'm required to do for my mission may be different than that particular airman or that particular lieutenant. As such, I have already completed the entire vaccination route. That's okay. You know, it's okay to be different, but there shouldn't ever be this idea that discipline doesn't apply just because of rank or things of that nature. And that's how you maintain good order and discipline within an organization. So a couple things to follow on with this. You know, there's sometimes this idea that, hey, discipline for consistency needs to be the same regardless of the scenario and regardless of the rank. And that part isn't necessarily true as you start to peel it back and you start to kind of understand it. And I highly recommend you talk about these topics with your supervisors and leadership teams, because they're good things to discuss. So for example, conduct unbecoming, whatever that conduct was, whatever you want to imagine it to be, you know, maybe it involved some alcohol or something like that. 3 different people did 3 different times of conduct unbecoming their position. Let's say those 3 people are Airman Smith, Captain Cooley, and Colonel Terry. You know, those are our 3 individuals who did it. That conduct unbecoming, although it's impossible to think of a scenario where every single thing about it was the exact same except for the rank, which is one of the first things about leadership, is being a commander that you have to walk through, is you realize every single situation is different and you approach every single situation different. But even if there was some place where we're able to say they all happened at the same party, they all had the same amount to drink, they all did the exact same action, whatever the case may be, the punishment itself can have completely different recourses, you know? So if it's 3 letters of counseling for conduct unbecoming, Airman Smith is going to be retained most likely with that, unless there's something significantly different with them going on in their lives, and they're going to learn from it and move on. Captain Cooley will probably not be eligible in any way, shape, or form for promotion early, but still has a fairly likely chance to be promoted on time, depending on where they were in the promotion cycle, and to learn from it and move on, despite the fact that it can significantly hinder their career progression by not being promoted early. Colonel Terry is going to be fired. I mean, most definitely, it's really, really difficult. You know, like I said, every situation is different, and that's okay. But more likely than not, Colonel Terry is going to be fired, and probably should be fired. You know, and we probably don't want to fire Airman Smith, and more likely than not, we don't want to fire Captain Cooley either. And it's okay that all 3 of those are different in how we approach them, and we have to think through what are the outcomes that you're actually trying to do in doing so. Like I said, a lot that goes into it. If you're really trying to get the exact same outcome from your discipline, then you have to be really working through what those actions are going to be. And that's why we have an amazing legal teams that help advise us, and we have commanders and who get great advice from senior enlisted leaders who work through these problems. So if you got a question on them, and this is my biggest thing, there is not a commander worth their salt that I can think of who would ever sit back and if one of the people within their organization came up to him and said, "Hey, ma'am, I'd really like to have a sit down with you for a few minutes just to kind of understand something that is going on, because I love our organization and I'd like to understand it better," where that commander's not going to sit down with them and say, "Yeah, okay, I can understand where from your perspective that's what you saw. Let's talk about it. Let's understand it." Because generally those types of conversations, they inform the commander. They let them know, hey, this was my action and this is what I intended to do with this disciplinary action. And some of the members of the unit, because all disciplines not only intended to impact the member, but also the good order and discipline of the unit, did not receive it that way. And that's a good feedback for them to adjust. So I highly encourage you to have that conversation with them. But once again, if you're not getting where you want to get with that one, go to the next higher in your chain, use those other resources that are available to you to do it. and hopefully you have enough respect for your leadership teams to include them in those conversations as you're doing so. Last one, yeah, it's a good topic. Appreciation and support and those sorts of things. So one of the things that's come up recently is this idea of how do we make sure that we're showing our appreciation, that we show that we value both our ops personnel and our support personnel. And by ops personnel, we generally mean the folks who are working on the flight line, and support personnel, we generally mean everything else. And you've seen, if you haven't seen it already, we're really working through some iterations in our awards program on how do we capture that. And I'll touch on that in a minute. First of all, the hardest thing for me with this subject is I truly don't know what everybody means by support. When they say support, it means something to them. So let me walk you through what support means for me. You know, I get this idea, the way that we kind of have it laid out right now, of anybody who's not working on the flight line is maybe a support type person. However, when I was a young CGO and I was flying the flight line, all those maintainers and aerial porters who were working on the aircraft and putting the loads in the back of the aircraft, in my mind, that was support. That was what they were doing. When I was the USAFE munitions manager on the USAFE A3 staff, ensuring that we had the right weapons in the right locations so that we could load the fighter aircraft with those weapons, that was the support. You know, the airlift aircraft were the support for the mission that I was attempting to accomplish there. When I was on the ground in northern Iraq, running convoys from Baghdad up to Erbil and all across that portion of it, for me, those fighter aircraft up in the air, you know, or those other aircraft, whether it be doing imagery or whatever, you know, that we were, you know, watching over the space and blowing up stuff as needed to be blown up in order so that we could get our mission done, they were the support. So, you know, so at some point, maybe all Air Forces support. I don't know, you know, at the other time, maybe realistically, you know, and we can have these great conversations about whether or not, you know, we used air power to win the war in Bosnia or Desert Storm or whatever the case may be. The oath I took was to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So I got no problem if I'm all support. I'm all in. Support's great. So what it really comes down to for me on this one is how are we expressing our gratitude and appreciation for folks? So recognizing that each and every one of us is key to the mission, and each and every one of us, no matter what our role to play, nobody's mission is really more difficult or less difficult than the other person's. They all got their parts of it that have strenuous requirements to make them happen, is important. I learned a long time ago, you know, you can never say please enough and you can never say thank you enough. So I'll just encourage you to continue to think through those ideas as you get after it and get the mission done, and really, you know, recognize that, yeah, you know, if we're sitting here and we also think, well, the FM folks, your RAs, you know, the people working money, they're the support people. Well, you know, it's not lost on us that right now every acting secretary for each of the services, Air Force, Army, Navy, and so on, all the acting secretaries right now come from a money background, and there's probably a good reason for that, and it's because budgets are going to change. You know, so maybe executing that $1 million budget for the wings, multi-million-dollar budget for the wing, is a more important aspect, you know, in some ways than what we got going on the flight lines. You know, I mean, it is literally of that importance. You know, and then you sit there and you think, well, one of the things that we are right now really struggling with as a nation is how do we defend our democratic institutions from cyber attack? I mean, that's huge. That is a huge thing, both internal and external. All right, so if our job is to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, the cyber role is massive. You know, so how do you compare these things? And maybe we need to quit worrying about how do we compare them and more about, hey, how do we recognize them? How do we understand what everybody's doing? How do we help figure out who's had a great quarter, a great year, recognize the work they're done, and continue to be thankful for all the other work people are doing, because they're all crushing it and they're all doing good things. So just some thoughts there to think about. Tell me where I'm wrong. I got no worries with that. Last thing for you. All right. So COVID vaccine, it's out. You know, I've already spoken with you guys a lot about the reasons I did it. You know, they're really focused on making sure I'm ready to do the mission, because I think mission readiness is huge for us, and the COVID vaccines for that. Also, you know, I want to protect my family. I want to protect my community. I want to protect my wingmen. I want to be active in my role to protect all of you. And those are things, as I got educated on the vaccine, that really made a difference to me for why I personally chose to get vaccinated. I think some additional information has come out that's worth sharing with you, and so I just wanted to take this, since I first did that video. It continues to come to light just how many side effects there can be from the COVID vaccine. So, and I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Side effects there can be from catching COVID. There are side effects from the COVID vaccine, but it's worth noting that those side effects have been really, really well tested, and they're generally small. Yeah, you might have some pain at the injection site, and you might feel tired. Hey, this thing's training your body. It's training your immune system. I get it. You can, people will react differently, and people will feel tired. But I also consider we put a lot of stuff into our body that's a far less but better tested. Between vaping and monster drinks and all sorts of other stuff that goes on. There's been a ton of really, really good testing, particularly into how we do mRNA vaccines. So I think you should consider that testing. The other part, though, that I started with is the side effects of COVID. This thing's different than the flu, all right? This idea of, hey, you catch the flu and then you're better in a couple of weeks. We are seeing long-lasting side effects that involve lung damage, kidney damage, heart damage, nerve and brain damage potentially, loss of hair. List goes on and on. We're going to learn more about COVID day in and day out, and recognizing that there are long-term effects from catching COVID, even if you are. All right, so we had some technical difficulties there, so I do apologize, but what it really comes down to is just ensure you have the best possible information. We've included a couple of links with this video too for you to consider as you get the information that's right for you to know this very personal decision you've got to make on whether or not to get vaccinated. So thanks for all you're doing. Know that I am proud of each and every single one of you. The mission you make happen day in and day out amazes me. And I just want to leave you with, please wash your hands, wear your mask, keep your distance, but most importantly, just take care of each other. With that, press.